And good morning, everyone. Mr. Mustard Pants today. A little character from my sketchbook. I thought it would look good to sit down the bottom right of my sketchbook, and I had put a light wash on it, and I thought it might translate into a larger picture. So what I have here is a 6x9 sheet of Arch, 140-pound cold press. In hindsight, I probably should have used a hot press paper doing the character. It would have been better to have the flat paper, but I went ahead anyway, and this is what I came up with. So as far as composition goes, my guy is obviously the main part of it, but I wanted to fill the rest of the page with some trees and do a little bit of landscape painting in the background, put a house and some other stuff, some rocks. So this is just a matter of fooling around with paints and seeing where it will go. So I've sped up the inking quite a bit so we can get to the painting part. And if you're just joining us, this is a Lamy Safari extra fine fountain pen, extra fine nib fountain pen, and I'm using Diatrabentis archive ink in this case. I did this painting months ago, and I'm just cleaning out my file of videos, and I thought I'd post it. So I'm going wet on dry to start this, and doing, I guess you'd call that negative painting. So I'm just painting around my objects with a combination of cadmium yellow and cadmium orange. I'm using my number 12 round, and I've got it loaded up so that I can cover a lot of area quickly, if not too many brush strokes. And my board's on a bit of a tilt, so I got a bead building up at the horizon line. I want to lift that out just so I don't have a big puddle and cause trouble later. So now my paper is damp, so I can do a wet on damp application. So there's a little less water and a little more pigment in the paint. And it's just blending nicely on the damp paper and spreading out as it should. Now for the upper part of this guy, I remember working through this painting and I thought, well, maybe I should just leave it like that. But then I thought, well, maybe I'll just go with a like a cobalt, a nice light wash of cobalt at the top, and just give the whole thing some color. As you can see, that wash is really light, adding a bit of purple into it and letting it work its way down. By the way, I had to stop the film a little bit short. The sun was beating down on the board right before I took the tape off it, so we won't get to experience the big reveal at the end, but we do get through the entire painting. It looks like my ground, again, wet on dry. I mixed up some yellow ochre and a bit of the orange from the sky. And I'm just wetting the ground here to get it started. So that's a wet on the dry. And here we can start putting in some other colors. I think that's a bit of sap green and a bit of olive green. And in the immediate foreground, I put some purple in. And it was looking flat, so I've gone in and grabbed some cadmium yellow, which is opaque. So it kind of worked its way over the other colors. And it kind of dried a little bit flat, so here I'm trying to recover using some purple to create some shadow in the foreground. And it looks like I tossed in a bit of salt too to create some texture, but I'm going to have to get back in and work at that. Now there's my standard process for the tree in the background. Using my mop brush and going in wet on dry with the sap green. So I wet the entire foliage area and then grabbing some undersea green to do the underside of it for the shadow side of the foliage. And I'll do the same thing on the larger tree. Now I couldn't leave this foreground alone, so I'm adding even a little more color. And that's what I was talking about, adding the darkness there to that dark shadow or a darker area to draw your attention. It's almost like a spotlight on the character. Now it looks like my camera is frozen on the palette, so I'll just have to walk you through it. That is a raw sienna I'm using for the mustard pants. And it's a wet on dry application and just load it up with paint and seeing where it runs in those pants. So now I can add stains if I want, change the color slightly. Yeah. Even more pigment there. Oh, that's awesome. And right where that nice little belly is, I just lifted out a bit of paint to give it some highlight. And now I can start adding my favorite thing, stains. So that's a burnt sienna. Stains in the crotch and underneath the almost like rusty bits where the suspenders meet the pants. Now his walking stick, I'm using a 6 round. That particular brush holds a lot of paint for me, so I like it. And I'm using a combination of browns. So this is a stone he has on the top of his walking stick, almost like an orb with leather wrapped around it to hold it in place. Here's my leather bits, which are burnt sienna. Nice reddy brown leather strap around it. Now my paint has run into my orb. Question is, do I fix that? Now I mentioned the hot press paper as well earlier. It'd be a heck of a lot easier to paint these flowers or weeds that are around the horizon there if it was hot press paper. I find when I'm using this cold press paper that's it's got some texture to it. It's hard to do detailed work like that. And this is a little 6x9 thing, so when you're trying to add color to it, it sometimes sneaks out over your lines, and unless you like that look and you want that. But I was going for a bit of detail here, so I kind of walked away from it. I'm going to regroup and see how I can deal with the other flowers or weeds. And here I'm just adding a little more shadow on the underside of the foliage. Now I added the shadows under his boots and across that foreground to give the just to ground the character a little more. And it is starting to take shape a bit. He's starting to have his place in the picture now. Here's the other chunk of foliage, which I didn't ink. Just wanted to have a bit of freedom and just create a random shape with the paint and then ink around it later on. Now his well-worn boots are supposed to be leather boots. And the nice thing about watercolor is with the combination of wet in wet, you can create some really nice distressed looks and textures. So in this case, I went in with a, a Payne's Gray, and now I'm using a bit of the burnt sienna, give them a bit of a reddy orange hint, and then more Payne's Gray on the shadow side and the bottom of the boots. And again, this is all wet in wet, and I'm just moving the colors around until I get them where I like them. My background tree is just that. It's in the background, and that glow would be hitting it. So I've created a really wet mixture of burnt sienna, And I just thought I'd put a really wet mixture in and just let it sit and not fuss with it too much because I don't want it too dark. I did add a bit of shadow at the base and under the foliage, but I just kind of wanted to leave that alone and seeing how it would settle when it dries. Now for this larger trunk, I want to have a more of a greeny look. It is being hit by the light, but I want it to have it a little more pronounced because it's closer. So the trunk is somewhat green, so I'm adding some blues and some of the sap green and more or less just the muck that's in the bottom of the palette. And I'm making it nice and wet, and I'm pushing the paint up the page. I want to fill that trunk and have the entire thing wet so that I can add paints and just let them flow down the page. And with it wet, again, just dropping other colors in, letting them blend on the page. And with that foliage dry, I can go up and add in the shadow side of the foliage, the darker underside. Put it in pretty dense, and then going with a wet brush and just softening the upper edge of it. This is kind of what it looked like in the sketchbook with the house being white in the background. Just a little bit of blue for the shadow and a nice red roof. Frantically mixing paints. What's next? Oh, the skin color. Okay, so the skin color for this guy is a yellow ochre with a bit of cadmium red. You can see it going in there, and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And that's my go-to skin color. So I'm going in wet on dry, wetting the entire area with that skin color. And then I could drop in some reds for his nose and ears and some darker skin color for the shadow sides. Once again, with a hot press paper, this would be an easier process. Ah, the burnt sienna suspenders. No outfit is complete without burnt sienna suspenders. They'll go nice with his dirty shirt. So when he got this shirt initially, it was white. And maybe it's his favorite shirt, it's the only shirt he wears. Maybe nobody's washing his clothes for him. So his white shirt is now covered with, let's just say it's well used and well enjoyed. Lots of stains in there. So we've got some burnt sienna, some raw sienna, that right next to his pants is where his dinner lands when he's eating. So I had to cut the film short because of the sunlight. It just got too intense and you couldn't see much that was going on. So we're in the last legs of this. So we're just going to paint his nose up, and I'm going to say goodbye now because we're almost at the point where I show you the final picture. So a little bit of cadmium red for the nose and the ears. And there he is, Mr. Mustard Pants. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you again soon with an urban scene.